Hey guys, Jim here from Budget RC, and this is week 3 of the WLToys 10428 upgrade series. And this week, we're upgrading the tires, so stick around. Hey guys, welcome back. Like I said in the intro, today we're going to be upgrading the tires. The tires that came with this vehicle have what I think is a really good tread pattern. And they're a pretty soft, grippy tire for a basher type vehicle. For a crawler, I think they end up coming up a little bit short. As you saw in my intro video, this thing struggled a little bit with crawling, partially because it had the open differential, which we've already addressed, but also partly just because these tires are a little bit hard. So what we're going to do is upgrade the tires. I've got tires all around this thing, and we're not going to be using them all, but I did want to show a little bit of a comparison just so you can see what some of the differences are. The tires that I've chosen for this vehicle are the Austar 2050 tires. Austar is an off-name brand. They have lower priced products, and because of the price, I wanted to give these a try. Now, these are essentially, I would call it, knockoff of the Hyrax, of the Proline Hyrax tire. And I'm not really thrilled that it's a knockoff design. I really would have preferred something unique that's not a copy. But we don't really have that option at this price point. The only other tires that are available at this price point are a Super Swamper knockoff, so you're still dealing kind of with the same thing. That said, these tires have a pretty good reputation for being pretty sticky, although a little bit soft, so tread wear may not be as good as you're going to find with the original tires. So if you're going to keep this thing as a basher, you're probably going to do really well with these OEM tires. For my purposes, because I want to use this more as a low-speed trail and crawl vehicle, I think these tires will be pretty good. Now that said, one thing I also wanted to take into consideration when choosing a tire was the tire height. The design of this vehicle being more of a multi-purpose vehicle and with the big pan underneath of it doesn't have as much ground clearance and as much breakover angle as some other vehicles might have. So in order to help deal with that aspect, I wanted a tire that was a little bit taller than the stock tire. And that's where these come in. These come in at about 4 3/4 inches tall, which is about as tall as you're going to get in a 1.9 tire. So if I park this tire next to the original tire, you can see that it's almost a 1/2 inch higher. So once it's mounted, that'll give us another 1/4 inch of ground clearance, which maybe isn't huge, but it's definitely going to be noticeable. And I think that combined with the better tread pattern and the better foams and the softer, stickier compound is just going to end up giving us quite a lot more traction. So now I'm going to take you guys through the tire removal, show you how to get this tire off, get the new tire on, and then we'll do that with all 4 and we'll try it out. So now we have our tires off of the truck, and what we need to do to take them apart is to remove the bead lock on the front as well as on the back. Each one of these bead locks is held on with 6 screws, so we're going to go ahead and take those out. Okay, so once you get the bead locks out, now what you need to do is get the actual wheel itself out. And these wheels are actually quite a bit wider than they look, so they're a little bit of work to get out. So you want to just get that tire folded over and off the wheel. Work it all the way around. And once you get to that point, you can kind of push it out from the back. And there's your wheel. Now this is the tire itself, and it's got what actually looks like a fairly decent foam. It's kind of stiff, and it's actually a memory foam, which for such a cheap vehicle is pretty impressive. But that said, it really is too stiff. So to get this wheel into the new tire, it's more or less a reverse operation. What you want to do is kind of work this in and start with one part at a time. Work it around, pull that around. Okay, and once you have that seated, you want to work your way all the way around. Make sure the foam is where it needs to be and everything's lined up pretty well. Now you can set it down, and you want to pay attention to this bead. This bead needs to sit in the little area of the wheel that's made for it. So you want to work your way around. Get that bead down into the groove. Once you get it down, it ought to stay there. And now what I like to do is get a screw into one of the holes so that we can get lined up. Start that screw just a couple of turns. Turn to the screw on the opposite side. Adjust your bead. And same deal. Get a couple of threads in. Now you should be able to get the rest of your screws started, keeping everything loose. Once you have them all started, go on a little bit of a star pattern. And sometimes I like to push the bead lock down first. Make sure that that bead is seated properly. And then bring the screws down. Still not over tightening at this point. We want to go just a little bit all the way around so that everything comes down evenly. You don't want to over tighten at any point because these bead lock rims are pretty soft and you can really see them starting to cave in on this wider tire. So we've got that one down pretty good. You can see the bead can't come out. So now we'll flip it over and do the same thing here. So you don't need to over tighten here. You can see that this bead lock is already starting to distort a little bit because it's just a thin plastic, and the tire bead itself and the tire is thicker than the original tire, so everything's just kind of bulging a little bit. But we tightened it down, everything's nice and tight, it's not going to come off, you don't need to go anymore. So now if we compare these two tires, you can see just like when we set them aside, you've got quite a bit more tire height here, you've got a more aggressive tread pattern, you've got a softer foam, and a softer compound. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest and then we'll be back. Okay, so here they are. We've got our new tires on. As I mentioned before, you can see that they're just a little bit taller.
I wish I was a little bit taller
than the old tires. Feeling them, you can tell that they're definitely stickier. We definitely have a softer foam. And overall, I'm really happy with how they look. Now I can't wait to see how they work. So what we're going to do to test that, because of the fact that it's the middle of the winter, the conditions are different every day, so I can't really do an A/B comparison. So what I did was, in my little dungeon under the house that most people call a basement, I've got this little course set up with a pallet on a 45-degree incline and then some bags of coal stacked up just to see how this thing can get up and over some of those. In addition to being able to test out the new tires, this is going to give us an opportunity to test the new ground clearance as a result of the tires, and we'll also get to see some of the articulation at play. So let's head over to my little pile and we'll see how it goes. So you can see this starting to struggle even down here before we get to the 45. On the 45-degree angle, it's got no hope of getting up. No chance. Even with more wheel speed, it struggles. I can definitely feel that it has more grip than the old tires. Backing this thing up is a royal pain with the speed control because it doesn't have a forward reverse option. Once I get it lined up, it seems to do pretty well. With the shocks With the shock oil changed, it's got pretty good articulation. Still not the best traction. And backing up is just incredibly difficult to do smoothly. One thing I'm noticing is that this servo really doesn't have the power to turn these tires. But you can see it climbs right up, where with the old tires it really struggled to get up some of this. Steering angle's not real good. Articulation, decent. So we made it up. Definitely need more servo. This servo just doesn't have the power to turn these wheels all the way if there's any kind of weight on the front. You can also see that the steering just isn't very sharp. A lot more grip going up that steep part. Some of that may be the extra ground clearance, but I think some of it is definitely the tires. So there we have it. You got to see the old tires and the new go up the same course. And the results weren't quite what I expected. I really expected these tires to be able to get up the incline a little bit better than they did. Now, one thing I noticed is that there's already some wear showing on these tires just from the little bit of driving that I've done to film this. So I don't think that bodes real well for the durability on these, but we'll see what happens. I was really giving those quite a bit of wheel speed, but I still didn't expect to see this kind of wear. So this week's expenses for the tires came in right at 20 bucks. So we spent our whole week's allowance this week, but this is the first time we did that. We've still got a bunch of money saved up. We're going to need it because I've got some big plans for this toward the end, but we really needed to bankroll some of that money first. I think these tires are really going to help out on the trails, and if we ever get better weather, I'm going to try them out and see how that pans out. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep working on the vehicle. So far I'm real happy how this vehicle has started to come around. In the last few weeks, between the silly putty and the front diff, going through the shocks, getting the shocks a little bit better so that we get some articulation, and now with these tires, I can really see this vehicle starting to work better. I really can't wait to get it outside on some trails to really get an idea of how it is, because this little setup that I've got here in my basement really isn't the best approximation, but it's the best I can do in the middle of winter here in Vermont. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you guys stick around, because in the next couple of weeks we're really going to start doing a few things to this vehicle that I think a lot of people with these vehicles are really going to like. So stick around. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button so you'll know when I'm posting new videos. Until then, guys, thanks. Uh-oh. Right into my pole.